At least in this committee, I can't speak to others. But if the item comes in and it is not on the printed agenda, it will not be part of the consent agenda. We'll have to go through it one by one, just because there is not enough time to vet these items. It is unnecessary for us to be up all night looking at these items, and some of my colleagues received them this morning. So they will not pass in consent, period. And next time, I'm just not going to put them on. You'll just have to wait for the next cycle. I've also requested from the chairman to have a special committee of appropriations and get after the budget drops. I think it is necessary. There are several items on today's agenda that we're going to talk about the budget because they impact the budget. However, not all of the commission has been briefed on the budget. And the public has not seen the budget, and the budget is not official because it has not been printed. This is by nature of how our calendar works. However, I do not think that we should pass items out of this committee and to July 16th or to September that impact a budget when some of us know that it's nonsense. Okay, it's, as I said in committee earlier this week, it's schizophrenic. If the administration brings us an item that has a dollar amount that does not comport with the budget that we have been told about, then what are we doing? In fact, one of the issues that we've been grappling with this year is this board has given the administration direction, and that direction is not in the budget. So let's be honest about what's in the budget and what's not in the budget, what we can afford and what we cannot afford, because we don't print money here. In this agenda, I added an item asking WASD to go flat, and we'll talk about it for several reasons. Number one, because I care about the department, and I feel that they should have more than a few hours during a budgetary meeting to get this straight. And number two, because I want to prove to my colleagues that nothing is sacred, including the department that I have defended for 5 years. So I ask for your patience today. We're not going to have a good time. We need to go through a lot of this. And if you haven't had your budget briefing, you're about to get one by hook or by crook. Yes, Commissioner Hardiman.
Well, first I'd like to say thank you for allowing me to be recognized. This is not my committee. I do not intend to be here to debate all the issues with you in regards to all of this. However, I have one wish, and it was just to make a comment on item 3O, which is a Dan Paul Plaza project. This is a project, well, let me say, this is an issue that's been a main issue for Miami-Dade County for a very long time. And the issue is that the Miami Heat has in its control this parcel of land that was told many years ago, decades ago, that it would be used as a park. And it has not been. And so the community is not very happy with that. And although the Miami Heat wants to do we have some other lease negotiations in the future, they've agreed in I think in a smart way to allow us to have immediate access to Dan Paul Plaza for us to use as a public space where it's not locked away from the people, obviously beyond sunrise, sunset, but to give us the use of this space as a park. We intend to make it beautiful. We intend to do things with it in the future. This does not have a budgetary effect for us at the moment. What this does is just gives us the permission to be in that space and to use it in a way that we haven't been able to use in the past. And I think this is a tremendous step forward. It is a promise that Miami-Dade County has made that I think that this board should be proud of, that we will be able to fulfill. And I'm just excited about moving it through the process.
And I agree, Commissioner Hardiman. I put it on the agenda. I know the history of the parcel. I'm happy to see it. I was not happy to see it at 10 p.m., but I was happy to see it, and we'll deal with that. And honestly, I think at this point we should start a quasi-permitting system with the administration where they have to tell us when they got the item and when they gave it to us, because this is absurd. That being said, you're more than welcome to say, you're more than welcome to speak on every item. This is not a committee where people are silenced, quite the opposite. I welcome everyone to attend, and that's why we're having a joint meeting of appropriations and everyone is welcome, because we have to go through this, because everything that comes here does impact the budget. So, and here we have an opportunity to really vet these items. And we'll go through your item. And again, the one thing, and I know that the Miami Heat sent someone, I just want to make sure that it has no fiscal impact at this point, and the item does come back to us. So, we'll get to it. But I'm just saying, I'm not going to make exceptions. If it's late, we go one by one. So thank you for joining us. You're happy to opine on all the issues. The same for Commissioner Higgins, and thank you for joining us, Commissioner Steinberg.
Madam
And
Chair?
we'll now, yes, I know you're on the committee, and you're always here. That's why I was surprised. You get A for attendance. So with that, we will start with the reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard. Mr. Attorney?
Madam Chair, reasonable opportunities in order now.
Thank you. So we'll open the reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard. Do we have any cards? I don't see any here. All right. Does anyone want to speak? If so, please come down to the well. Going once, going twice. All right. Seeing no one here, we'll close the reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard, and we'll have the setting of the agenda. So moved. Do I have a second?
It-
Okay.
What-
What are the polls? Yes.
Before you do that, in addition to the changes on your official agenda and the additions, withdrawals, and deletions on your changes memo, an additional item has been added to your agenda as item 2G.
All the late items have been pulled.
There is also a Scrivener's error on item 2B on the page labeled MDC03. In each of the first and third whereas clauses, there are 3 erroneous zeros reflected in the numerical value. The references to 500 billion shall henceforth be reflected as 500 million with the setting of today's agenda. With that, a motion to set the agenda is in order.
Okay. What are the polls? Obviously, I just pulled all the late items. What else?
Madam Chair, if I could be recognized on
Yes.
3O whenever we get to that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can you list the late items that are subject to the pull list or the
Miss-
attorneys?
Mr. Attorney?
Madam Chair, would those be all the items on the changes sheet?
Yep.
Okay, so that would be 2F, 3L, 3M, 3N, 3O, and 2G.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I could just pull 2E for co-sponsorship.
Madam Chair, I need to pull 2C, please, for a floor amendment. I need to pull 2E, 3G, and 3K.
2E, 3G?
3G and 3K.
Any other ones? One second.
Madam Chair? Yes. Could they just repeat all the pulled items again?
Mr. Attorney?
Yes, Madam Chair. The items that are currently on the pull list are items 2C, 2E, 2F, 2G, 3G, 3K, 3L, 3M, 3N, and 3O.
All right. Yeah, okay. All the ones I wanted to pull too. All right, everyone. With that, can I have we have a motion from Gonzalez. Can I have a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Let's go, Mr. Attorney.
First item on your pull list, Madam Chair, is item 2C.
I pulled this item for a simple floor amendment, Madam Chair. I don't know if the attorneys would like to read it.
We have to vote on everything else, right? Oh, we said it.
Good morning.
Okay, all right, okay, go ahead.
I recognize? Okay. Commissioner Cohen-Higgins moves to amend item 2C to clarify that Mr. Archer shall serve for the remainder of Mr. Caceres' unexpired term.
I think we set the agenda. I don't think we voted on the consent items. Did we?
For clarification,
Yeah, I know.
we can clarify, but with the setting of the agenda,
Yeah,
the
we
board was
voted.
approving all the items that weren't listed on the pull list, including the withdrawal of item 3D.
3D, okay, all right, just checking. All right, yes. All right, so back to Cohen-Higgins' amendment. Is everyone okay with that? Does anyone have any questions? All right, Commissioner, would you like to move it
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I move to C
As amended.
as amended?
as amended.
All those in favor? Aye. Any against? All right, dispensed of. Next.
Next item is item 2E.
All right, huh? Yes, of course, yeah, happy to.
Madam Chair,
Yeah?
just, I'm here for 2 items, and I just have to leave at noon, so, and I'm
Okay.
not going to talk on any of your other items. So I'm here for 2G and 3M,
All right.
if that's possible to take those before you get into the water thing, which I know will be a very lengthy discussion. Thank you.
All right, okay. What were your items?
And mine are easy, 2G and 3M.
All right.
G and 3F, okay.
All right, well, in that case, so if we're gonna do the late items that folks are here for, we'll start with Hardeman. Hardeman will do his, and then we'll do Higgins's too.
Madam Chair, if I could be recognized on that item, on 3O?
Yep.
Whenever it's appropriate?
I think I've said enough. I know
Yep.
that the Miami Heat is here. They have a representative here.
Please come up.
That shows that we have an agreement to this, and
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, of course.
So I just wanted to ask, well, first of all, so I'm a Miami native. I grew up in Miami, and I wanted to not only thank but congratulate Commissioner Hardeman for working on this. When we're talking about the Dan Paul Plaza, this is something that was promised to all residents of Miami-Dade County in like 1997, 95. So with your permission, Commissioner, I'd like to co-sponsor this item if you would allow me.
yeah, I don't mind that.
That's all I had to say.
All right. Well, if we could just have something on the record, I know that we said that the Heat had a representative here. And again, I know that you all have been working on it. This item is just to start those negotiations, to open it up, so and it comes back to us, right?
So this, as I understand, this item does open it up. It gives us the ability to have the space. The further conversations about the
Improvements.
lease and other things is another conversation. My idea with this was, I don't want to delay this any further. I don't want it to delay what the community deserves to have, which is the open space. And I certainly don't want it to be used as a chip to bargain with. So what this is saying we commit, Miami Heat commits to providing this space. Now everything moving forward is a completely different conversation. Miami is a Miami Heat town, and we have a responsibility of providing world-class sports. so that we can have world-class tourism in our community. And so I think that Miami-Dade County would do the right thing as it pertains to whatever it is that we agree on moving forward. However, to me, this was a symbolic gesture that they are willing to really bifurcate this issue from the main issue of lease agreements and furtherances, with this project. And so that's why I'm excited about this, because this says, no, we're going to do this no matter what, and then we'll decide everything else later.
Okay. In terms of that, you're going to negotiate further. We were saying no fiscal impact. We're just opening up the space.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
The committee. Tony Ress here with Lofts at 2800 Ponce de Leon Boulevard, Suite 1200 in Coral Gables. Yes, the answer is yes. We're very much in support of this. We've been working on this for a little bit, and we want to advance these conversations so that we can move forward with this joint use of Parcel B.
Okay. Any questions? All right. I just wanted that on the record. Anyone have any other questions? All right. Can we have a motion?
I'll move it, Madam Chair.
I'll second. All those in favor? Aye. All right.
And Madam Chair,
Yes.
is it possible that you can ask for this to be moved to the July 16th BCC meeting?
We're happy to add it to the list for July 16th.
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, Commissioner Higgins.
Yes, Madam Chair. Item 2G, just for the record, I submitted this to the chair's office on the 28th of May, and it was approved by the CITT on the 28th of May, which means they had it several weeks before. This item has no fiscal impact. What it does is it changes how we are able to implement safety projects we have already approved along rail corridors. So this board, in every budget, as well as in the CITT's 5-year plan, we approve the projects. 17 years ago, we set a maximum amount of $25,000 that the department can do to implement rail safety projects. Obviously, the price has gone up in the past 17 years. So this just changes the authority for how they can actually go ahead and accelerate. These projects are very complicated. For example, we're working one on the Hialeah rail yard now. You're talking with CSX, FDOT, all of these other folks. And so this will just allow them, rather than having for every item that's over $25,000, by the way, everyone is now over $25,000, to just shave 4 to 6 months off the process. So I'm sorry that it got to you late, but I can tell you I did not ask for it late. So thank you. I would appreciate a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner. And if we could have the director up, we talked about it a little bit this morning. And I totally agree with the changing of the authority. We do this work at Tri-Rail. You're 100% right. This is not what it costs, right? And we spend a lot of time spinning our wheels, no pun intended, trying to get this done. And first of all, I'm excited that we're going to do the Hialeah rail yard because there's so much going on in that area. We have talks about an inland port, lots of different things, and we need to figure out how we're going to get in and out of there. That being said, I am a huge proponent of the Coastal Link, and I know you've put in so much time on it, Commissioner Higgins. However, we currently have a bit of a pin in that, and I'm working on it. You're working on it. I know we're all working on it as we try to find funding for Tri-Rail and see how we fix this problem that we now have at the state level. I just want some clarification as to what projects we are prioritizing, right? Because I don't want us to be accused of working on something that is still up in the air. I'm Director.
Stacy Miller, Director of Department of Transportation and Public Works. Thank you, Chairman. So I don't have a particular list of projects, but I do have a list of the types of items that we go through. So we usually have 6 basic reviews on railroad crossings annually. That's about $50,000 per review. So it's not a prioritization process. We work with SFRTA, South Florida Rail Corridor, and the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority, and FEC on a variety of different locations. So we do about 6 of those a year. We have complex reviews that are about $100,000 a year, and there's, again, on those 2 corridors, approximately 4 per year. We have design work that has to be done, as Commissioner Higgins mentioned. We have safety railroad improvements that occur. Those are usually about 2 per year. Those are $1 million per design. And then we have flagging support services. Again, 45 days a year, approximately $3,100 a day, which puts us about at $150,000. So it's not necessarily prioritizing specific projects, it's the nature of how we do business with SFRTA and with FEC, as well as additional projects such as Hialeah Yard, and ensuring that we have the opportunity to have the tenants at that yard review plans that we're working on to assure us that we can hold the space that we need for future development while they work with Amtrak, FEC, inland ports, and all the other aspects that are going on our variety of different railroad corridors. So it's really more global than project-specific in that we have assessments annually with the Florida Department of Transportation, as well as our railroad partners, and prioritize them as they come in for needs for safety improvements.
I understand. Now, in terms of the budget that we're going to be receiving on the 15th, is there a line item with this $5 million, or is this an estimate?
That's an estimate of the work that we normally do on an annual basis. It's not a specific line item that I'm aware of. It would be embedded in a variety of different line items.
Okay, yes.
Through the chair, what we're asking for is for the mayor or her designee to have the authority to expend up to
No, I know
$5
what you're
million.
asking for. I
So-
got it.
And in the budget, what you will see is their planned expenses for the year, which will reflect what the director just said, those planned activities for the year 26, FY 26.
Right, and I agree with that, and like I said, I don't have a problem with the authority. I don't have the problem with the projects. I have a problem with the disconnect between the transit gap, right, and the estimates. That's my issue, right? So just so that there's clarity on that. I don't have, the problem is that when we see these numbers, people are assuming, okay, there's $5 million is gonna go to this. We don't know that. So what I wanna know is, I'm fine with this. I would feel more comfortable if this had the actual numbers for the next fiscal year. Because then as we work on the budget, we understand this is how much is being spent for rail crossings, right? As opposed to just a number that's out there, which is what you spent in the past. Because this year's transit budget is not last year's transit budget, right? We're on the same page, right?
Through the chair, one of the things that I want to make sure we're clear on is in the briefings with each of the commissioners, we have almost been solely focused on the gap in general fund. There are surtax funding and other vehicles that are used for this particular exercise. And so I absolutely agree. What I would ask for the director is if we could get a list of what's planned for the coming year and the funding source for those respective activities so that we can provide reassurance that we will not exceed what's budgeted. And your authority granted to the mayor, it puts us in responsibility or gives us the accountability for ensuring we don't exceed what's budgeted.
Right, and then just for clarity's sake, because we talked about this morning too, this was approved by CITT before they got their haircut, right? So, they got a haircut too. How much did CITT lose? 27?
We think it's approximately 27 million.
27. Okay, so just so we're clear, we're not in the same space as we were a month and a half ago when they were looking at this. So that's my point. Commissioner Higgins, I'm happy to support it. I just think that there should be clarity as to the exact projects for next year.
And as I said, both of my items today are about standards in process, not in budget, that were set nearly 2, and in one case, 25 years ago, 2 decades and 25 years ago. We set hard numbers that is virtually impossible for them to advance items. They don't advance and spend 1 penny of this if we don't approve it in the budget.
Well,
right?
Yes and no, because
So-
you're giving her authority. You're giving, yeah.
But the authority only happens when we approve a project in the budget or the 5-year plan with the CITT. So, and we do this all the time. Like we have advanced, we have done everything we can to make procurement accelerate. By not giving this authority, we're still going to approve the same projects we have in the budget. Whatever we approve, we approve. Whatever we take out, we take out. The difference is every single rail crossing that we're going to approve in the budget is going to require a board item, which adds 4 more months of time. It adds attorney times, it adds processing times, agenda office times. Things are coming at 11 o'clock to your committee and my committee. Generally, these are going to come to my committee in the middle of the night, right? So this is about process. If we say to the director, we're not spending 1 penny next year on rail crossing safeties, they all come out of the budget and none of this gets exercised. But if we approve even one, every one of those little things is going to cost more than the $25,000 we established
I agree with you,
20 years ago.
I agree with you, but your item has an estimate. And my concern is, again, the coastal link. So what I don't want is for us to be accused of working on intersections that are part of a plan that we as a board have to decide what happens next. And I know, like I said, I'm working on it, you're working on it, right? But I just don't want to be accused of spending money on something that right now we have not figured out what comes next. So Hialeah, solid. Like the ones that we have to do, solid. You know, and look, we talk about passengers, and I will tell the board, you know, this impacts freight also. This is part of the conversation. They're negotiating for their freight rights and their freight times, and we're negotiating for the passenger ones, right? So, so this is dynamic, and I understand the need. I just think that once you put a number on it, as much as you don't want to trigger a conversation about the budget, you trigger a conversation about the budget, right? My only request is, can we have a list? I don't know if you want to move this to the 16th. I assume you do.
Yes, I think that that would be helpful because we don't meet again for another 7 weeks, and that would give them the ability to move items forward if they're already in the works.
Again, happy to do it. I just wanted to have a list when it comes to us on the 16th so that we know exactly what we're dealing with in this budget, if we are going to be doing stuff before September 1st, and then what is programmed for the following budget. And I don't think that's a difficult ask. All right, does anyone have any questions on this one?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
for this item, with the coastal link, there's no state funding for that, correct?
Yeah, that's my point.
I'm asking.
Yeah.
Is there? I'm
So-
sorry. No, through the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that, and we'll bring in urging. There was an error that was made up in Tallahassee where it was inadvertently, the funding source was eliminated, not just for the coastal link,
For
but
Tri-Rail, too.
for Tri-Rail. So essentially, we're in a situation where Tri-Rail will stop service probably within the next 18 months to 2 years. I have an urging to come back on that. In all conversations with our state legislatures, they realized it was inadvertently done to leave out the $200 million. We do not need $200 million today, right? That was never meant to be a one-year tranche. That would have come in over several years as we're constructing and buying rolling stock. I am under every impression that that will be corrected in the months to come, whether that's through a special session, which is, you know, being talked about over the summer, or whether when they go back, which fortunately this year is earlier. The good news is in the president's budget that was signed, the $389 million for the federal funds was included in that bill. So we should congratulate ourselves for having a project that has broad national support. So I feel as if we're in a temporary hiatus of a couple of months, you know, maybe it's as long as 6 months, but there was certainly no, I've spoken with the mayor of Broward County. He spoke with his state delegation. They too did not realize they were doing this. So it does seem like we have broad commitment to correct that. And because, of course, we have a project that the president is very interested in seeing happening. And so I just think they were working very late over a weekend, didn't realize what they cut. So I'm not sure that it was, I'm sure it wasn't intentional. As a matter of fact, the speaker has said as much.
Same here.
Yeah.
We've had those conversations. Same with Tri-Rail. We're going to have a special meeting where
but-
we're going to talk about it.
But we're obviously not going to be spending money on rail cross. I mean, it's ridiculous. We're not going to spend money on rail crossings when we're not ready to do it. And let me be very clear on the Northeast Corridor. The critical path to the Northeast Corridor is not construction. It is the purchase of the locomotives and the rolling stock. It can take over 4 years to buy those. So by the time we place the order for that, we have plenty of time when the state's matching funds come to us to be working on the rail crossings. The Hialeah Rail Yard is a hot mess. We got a lot going on with all kinds of things, and it needs to be improved now with or without the Northeast Corridor. And all of our rail partners agree on that. But we are certainly not going to be wasting money on crossings unnecessarily, and you would not even start those projects until we're able to place an order for rolling stock. So I don't think we have to, I mean, we're all worried about it because it's very emotional to have our train service cut inadvertently. But at the end of the day, the project's not going to be impacted in the long run, and I think this will this will be corrected quite quickly.
And like I said, we're all working on it, but my point is I would put a pin in coastal link planning and engineering until we figure out the state issue. That's my suggestion. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. I don't know that I would put a full pin in it. I mean, as long as it makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily spend money that isn't necessary to spend, and I think you know that. But I think timing happens so quickly, and if the state does remedy the issue, I don't want us to be so far behind that now we're playing catch up on something that's already been delayed. But that's just my thought.
Yeah, and through the chair, there's also been some other very favorable things that have happened at the federal level. One is the TIFIA funding used to only go up to 30% on projects like this, and now you can use TIFIA funding for up to 49% of a project. So that's, anyway, there's other options. I don't agree with unnecessarily stopping a project that still has a long time on engineering to go. But I don't think we should start construction on rail crossings, right? I think design and planning is different from actual physically putting a shovel in the ground. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, and I think that's where, I mean, I agree with your statement as well. I mean, but I do see what both of you guys are saying, right? We might not want to put a pin in it. I just don't want to get caught with our pants down, right? Like, I don't want to start investing into it, and then halfway through we can't afford it, and we get repossessed, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, like I said, we're all trying to figure it out. But again, I agree with Commissioner Higgins. We're all hopeful, but we also haven't found the money where we're going to make things right. So as we continue to look for the money, we keep with the meetings. My point is it can hold for a month or two until we figure it out. And then we can work on Hialeah and the other things that are actually happening in real time. Right. So I think anything else? All right. So if I can have, move it. All right. Second. All those in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you.
And then, unfortunately, I have one other item, which is 3M. This is something you and I have talked about, the appraisal process at the county, which is dramatically broken. But Alejandro, who's here, who has done a wonderful job at trying to fix it. This is another standard that we set for the maximum amount we could spend on appropriations. We set the maximum with, kind of no annual adjustment 25 years ago. And as a result, they're out of authority to continue to do appraisals. Obviously, they're not appraising things just willy-nilly. They're appraising projects we're already working on. They're, by HUD standards, we're required to do appraisals anytime we're building affordable housing. Obviously, the Metro Center project that we're in the midst of, in order to issue a contract, you'll have to do appraisals. And so this, I think, would help Alejandro be able to accelerate some of those appraisals, which have held up affordable housing projects in my district, your district, Commissioner Hardeman's district, right? We have all felt the pain. So I think this got on late because they have a few they'd like to work on over the summer. So that one is late, and I'm sorry about that one. I can't claim innocence.
All right. My only question about it is, I agree with you on the timing, and I think that we should expedite it, but we also have had issues with more than one appraisal, the waiving of appraisals, so I wish we could all land on a rule, because I feel like the appraisal rule doesn't always apply. It depends on which attorney you're drafting with, and what you're working on. I have yet to find a unilateral rule on appraisals, and I find that very frustrating. But I agree. And listen, I think one of the things that we have to look at is the data on this in terms of how many times it's been waived, how many times it's been done, and how many times this board has decided to completely ignore an appraisal. So, so there's that. That's obviously beyond the scope of this item, but the only thing that I would add to this item is in terms of, I mean, if they say that they could do it within this time period?
Do what within the?
Yeah, so they can expedite it. No, because they always come back, right?
Well,
And that-
right now they're out of expenditure authority, so they can't do any appraisals, right? So whatever it is you and I are working on, we need affordable housing to go forward. We need to make agreements with HUD. We need to sell a piece of county property. We need to buy something for water and sewer. We can't do any of it. So the expenditure authority limit was set 25 years ago. The county was a lot smaller. We didn't do quite the extent of affordable housing. So if we don't increase this expenditure authority to something that is rational, they're not doing appraisals on anything that we're not working on. We as county commissioners, right, in our districts, they're not appraising anything in District 5 that I don't know about. And by the way, when I've waived appraisals, it's because the process has been so bad, they've had to come to the board. I knew that would delay my project for 4 or 5 months. I'd rather have affordable housing built without the appraisal.
Agree.
So this helps him in his process to make this work better.
So,
May not be perfect, but it's certainly going to help him work better, right, Alejandro? I see you, or and Carla Denise, I see you there. So,
yeah.
and I've promised at our housing committee that I would try to work on a couple of these things. So this is just me doing what I told you I would do in committee.
Yeah. No, and I agree on the housing piece. The one thing that I think is interesting is when we work on our budget, we rarely go back and look at what happened the year before. So the question is, like, how many appraisals to your point, this hasn't been fixed for 25 years. I get it. But when you establish the amount for this in the budget, what are you looking at? And how much over did you go last year and the year before that? And what are you planning on presenting this year? Come on down.
Chair, our Assistant Director in PIOD over Real Estate and Development.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Alejandro Martinez Esteve, Assistant Director, PIOD. So yes, we base this amount based on historicals. So in the previous years, we've almost doubled the amount. The request that we're doing now, we're probably at 75, 80% of that request. So the initial, the expenditure authority that we're working with now at 50%, we triple, almost quadruple that on an annual basis. So that presents challenges for us as far as timeliness, and it also presents challenges to the appraisers that we contract with, because a lot of times we have to ask them to either hold off on submitting an invoice or perhaps do us quote unquote a favor until we can get to the next budget year and have that allocation. But a lot of times that allocation is immediately eaten up by amounts that we owed from previous years. So this is based on historicals. We feel confident that for the foreseeable future, it'll account for our needs.
A question in terms of where the money comes from. I guess it depends on the project, but at what point, do you get it back as part of the application project? Like how does that work?
So yes, so the monies to pay for these appraisals are based on a particular department or a particular project we are working on. The 8-4 process, we're also working with one of the district commissioners to modify that to pass those costs to the developer instead of the county having to front those costs. So that's something that hopefully you'll see in the near future to account for that as well. But in the immediate, the county would front those costs with the appraiser, since we have the contracts with the appraisers for a reimbursement to the developer.
But it would follow, and obviously you could upfront it, but it would follow that once the deal comes before the commission, that would be a cost that the commission would pass on to whoever's doing the project.
Yes, so hopefully even prior to that, right? So when they submit.
Prior is better, but I'm just saying, worst case scenario, it would be embedded in the deal.
Absolutely.
Okay. What about if the deal takes too long and you have to do a second one?
So we would account for that as well. So those modifications that I spoke to are going to account for that. They're also going to account for, we receive applications for multiple properties. So it would also factor in an increased cost of appraisals based on the fact that you're appraising more than one property. So all of this, we are contemplated.
Okay, well, I look forward to see whatever the next item is that has some clarity. Does anyone have any questions on this one? All right, seeing no questions, can I have a motion?
Move it.
Have a second? So we have it moved by Commissioner Cohen-Higgins, seconded by Emiliano Orbis. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right,
Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate it.
thank you. All right, Mr. Attorney.
Your next item is item 2E.
All right, so now we'll go to 2E. I'll try to make it quick. So, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, I really think that we need more time to drill down on this budget. I have been working on water and sewer for 5 years, and we have a lot of savings that we've been working on, but we also have a consent decree. And as you know, I brought the item where we comply with the consent decree. The consent decree is an enormous capital project, and compliance with the state rules are important. That being said, we have asked every department to do their best. I know that we have focused on departments that are receiving money from the general fund. But this is my way of showing by example that the same conversation I had with our Department of Solid Waste is the same one that we're having with WASD. And I don't know, Roy, if you want to take this up, or the director, what do we want to do? How do you want to do it? This just means that Roy and the director have to spend more time with me in the weeks to come.
Madam Chair, for the record, I'm Roy Coley. I'm the Chief Utilities and Regulatory Services Officer. I'm formerly the Director of Water and Sewer Department, so I can attest to all the support that you've provided the department over the last 5 years, and it's more than appreciated. What I can say to you is the department has done an amazing job over this year and the past few containing operational costs, and that we can represent that we will not be asking for any rate increase to go towards operations. Efficiencies have been continuously found utilizing the Lean Six Sigma approach. We have an in-house team that goes through every process, has yielded amazing results in efficiencies from operating plants to customer service improvements, and we have found those efficiencies. We're happy to work with you to look at different ways to reorganize and see if there's a way to find continual savings for the capital program. As you mentioned, both the consent order and the ocean outfall legislation required this body to submit plans to the feds and the state back in 2013 for both programs of a work plan. Those plans were submitted. Both plans did state that the monies would be raised in the years that it was needed through revenue increases and then take it for the bond market. So it was contemplated by this board back then that that's how we would do it. And so that's what we would be proposing. But if we can find reoccurring savings through realignments of the business, I know you've got a lot of ideas we've discussed that could minimize that. Of course, we welcome it and look forward to it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Cohen-Higgins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I pulled the item. I have a number of questions, and thank you, Chief, for being here, and thank you, frankly, for sharing such wonderful news that it is your intention to keep the water and sewer rates flat for our residents in Miami-Dade County. That means a lot, I know, to this board and also to the residents, and is a real testament to the amazing work that I know you're doing as chief and as the former director of the water and sewer department. So really, congratulations to you on that. I mean that wholeheartedly, and I know that that's not a small feat, especially considering the fact that that department is under the consent decree. I pulled this item, however, because I don't know that the form is proper. We go through a budget cycle every year where solid waste fees, water and sewer fees are heavily and hotly debated by this board year in and year out. For one of us to catch wind of the fact that the rates are going to remain flat and then sponsor an item directing the administration to do what the administration was already going to do concerns me by way of setting precedent, right? Because then it comes as though we are directing you to do something that you have been working diligently and for a very long time to already accomplish, as opposed to the regular course of things, which is for us to be presented with a budget, which is going to print on July 15th, and have the hearing and the discussion, most importantly, with numbers and data that we can take a look at and see where the numbers are and make an educated and an informed decision on whether we want to increase, decrease, or keep rates flat. This item, the intention is great. I support the intention. I'm sure at the appropriate time, i.e. our budget review hearings, when that proposal is made and we have data, we've had the opportunity to have the meetings, as our Madam Chairwoman said. Not every commissioner has yet been briefed on the budget. That is the appropriate time for us to make an informed decision. The item before us now has no numbers, has no data. And everybody knows my message is always the same coming from this dais: show me the data. So while I applaud the efforts and the accomplishments of the department with what will likely be a situation where rates are kept flat, I am not comfortable with commissioners directing the administration to do that without us having the opportunity to see the data that supports that directive. I don't have the data. It's not attached to the item. So I don't feel comfortable supporting this now.
That's fine. I'm happy to answer.
I'm not finished, Madam Chair. I don't feel comfortable supporting this now. It doesn't mean that I won't support keeping the rates flat when they come to us at the appropriate time, i.e. through the budget hearing. I'm just concerned about the precedent that this sets, it being brought to us in this form. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Really quick. I know that not everyone has had their budget briefing, but I know that Commissioner Cohen-Higgins has. I have. I don't know, Mickey, have you had your briefing? This afternoon. So the administration is not recommending to keep the water fees at zero. Quite the opposite. This board passed a 5-year plan where it has an incremental increase in order for us to meet budget outfall. So I appreciate your comment. However, it's not correct. I'm actually proposing something different from what the administration is proposing and what will be in the budget. And I've committed to put in the time to work on that. And that's why I brought this item. So to the attorneys, we talked about this when I drafted the item. It is not inappropriate. In fact, it's an opportunity for me to work directly with the administration. Now, the reason that I brought it in this fashion is I've actually done difficult budgets. I was at the school board when the state of Florida slashed education by over $1 billion. I've been in a chamber until 7 a.m. I've been in a chamber until 3 a.m. Working last minute, trying to balance a budget because we went several rounds and we couldn't get to a number. And I did not want to subject WASD to that, because I know for a fact that what happens at 2 a.m. when we all pull out our pencils, those of us that have done this, is not necessarily what is in the best interest of the department. So while the mayor and I agree on several things, on this one, I think that we can do a lot better. And I'm committing my late July and early August to working with WASD and to finding solutions so that we're not doing this at 3 a.m. So anyone else have any other comments?
May I clarify something?
Yes, by all means.
I would like to clarify something, Madam Chair. What I stated was that the operational costs had been so contained and reduced that there would be no component of operations in a rate increase. They would have no impact. What still may impact and would impact rates is the money needed to proceed with the capital program. The capital program being multiple billion, and the only source of revenue for that program is revenue bonds that have to be supported by the rates. So operations has done everything they can to contain cost, but if we want to comply with the consent order and the ocean outfall, we have projects to proceed with that we either have to raise money for through rates or find some savings somewhere to pay for capital.
Agree. Commissioner Steinberg?
Okay, that's very important information I think that we need to have in terms of your capital plan. So I have a briefing later today. I haven't had a chance. I hear what both of you are saying, because at the end of the day, we want to aspire for this as being the end goal. How we get there, I don't know, the road in which we take to get there, we could maybe agree to disagree on. But I will say that for purposes of today, I'm fine, moving it to the full body, because I think it should be a full body discussion.
Agree.
But, I don't know ultimately after my briefing and after I sit down and have an opportunity to sit down with Water and Sewer Department, ahead of our budget. I really want to know exactly what impacts could be. Make sure the forecast that we're looking at makes sense. Make sure that the efficiencies you're looking at to make sure that we don't have to increase anything. Because trust me, I don't want to increase anything on anybody. We are planning correctly so that we are in compliance with our consent decree. That's my only concern, is the consent decree at this time. So, so for today's purposes, fine, we'll move it up, but, you know, I think I still need to do a better deep dive.
Agree.
But I like the sentiment and the aspiration.
Well, and as a point of clarification, this board did pass a 5-year rate increase plan. So we actually worked on that. And we agreed to continue to raise the rates for 5 years. So that's why this item is different from the Department of Waste Management, because Waste Management, by statute, the increase has to come to this board annually. While Water and Sewer has to come to this board annually as part of the budget, we do have a 5-year plan, and we worked on that 5-year plan. So right now, without this item, the direction that this board has given to Water and Sewer and to the administration is to follow the 5-year plan. So I did not want to repeal that 5-year plan. What I am looking at is specifically this year, and we've worked very hard, as Roy mentioned, to reduce operations. And now we have to look at the capital program and see what efficiencies are there. I can tell you that I think there are efficiencies there, specifically when we come to sludge and we come to several issues. We have been able to find things, and I'm happy to work on it. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would actually like to be listed as a co-sponsor of this item. I do see the concerns. I feel like the concerns are very well raised, and I think that we should have those conversations. However, if I'm reading this correctly, it's a proposal to create a plan. So I would assume that plan would come back, and we'd be able to have a discussion on that plan and see how these efficiencies can be identified and whether this can happen at all. I think it's a fair. I think it would be a fair assessment to shoot for the stars and try to do this. I think it would be great for the residents of Miami-Dade County. So I mean, I'd like to be listed as a co-sponsor if you'd have me.
Yes, I would love to. I would love to. Thank you. So can I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Thank you. A second? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
I thought you said this was a place where people
Oh,
could be.
by all means, speak, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Need some clarification, Director. And I appreciate you clarifying the points that you made regarding the operational expenses versus the capital plan that we have to do under the consent decree. I misunderstood, potentially. Is it not the recommendation from the administration this year to raise water and sewer rates on our residents? I need to know that in order to determine my vote on this item, because it's my understanding there may be confusion on my part. Is it the recommendation of the administration to raise rates this year?
The budget has not been finalized, so the mayor has not made her final recommendation, so I can't speak to the final, but what I can say to you is, in compliance with the plan that the chair referenced, we would raise the rates if we want to go get the $500 or $600 million needed for the capital projects this year. It would be the practice to do. What I would like to add to that is, each year that we have done this, we have actually raised the rates less than projected and previously approved due to the wonderful efficiencies that have been found. And so when the 5-year plan was approved that we would be raising rates 8% a year on average, we've been 4, 5, and 6. So we've raised the rates less. What our commitment to you is that we can operate this year without a rate increase. Any rate increase would be for paying for capital. And so our proposal would include that, presuming the mayor approves it in her final budget recommendation to you. What I understand this item, Ms. Commissioner Regalado is asking that we sit with her and find a way, can we stay in compliance without going back to the bond market, or can we find a way to pay for it? And what we pledge to do is work with her and see if that's possible.
Okay, on operational or on the capital portion?
What we're saying on operational, we can commit to, we don't have to have any rate increases for operational expenses. We only need rate increases for the amount of capital we want to do with the consent order, the ocean outfall, and those types of things.
Okay. And thank you very much for clarifying that. I'm now clear. And by you communicating and clarifying that the budget hasn't been finalized, it prints July 15th. A consent decree is a federal mandate that says you must comply with this, that, and the other, essentially, or else. Am I mistaken by that?
You're exactly right. And the way our consent decree is structured is it's a project-specific consent decree which says thou shalt build this, and there's a list of projects the county has to build. We also have a schedule we have to stay on, and if we fall off that schedule, we're subject to federal fines, and they're substantial.
Subject to federal fines, and they're substantial. And so if we do not raise rates, and it is determined later at the appropriate time that those rates need to be raised, even if slightly incrementally because efficiencies are found, we then could potentially be open to federal fines as a result of not meeting those capital improvement project mandates under the consent decree.
And what I can say to you is the administration would never recommend a condition that would leave us subject to those types of fines and falling off course. Our commitment is to try to find a way to minimize any rate increase that we ultimately request in the final, but that we always stay on schedule for our ocean outfall and our consent order that I can tell you under Mayor Levine Cava, we have done about twice as much work in the last 5 years as in the previous 5.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that, and that makes perfect sense to me. And again, it really exacerbates my concern, quite frankly, that again, the idea is brilliant. I love it. I'm always fighting for flat or lower rates. The chairwoman, my colleague, we always say the same thing up here. My concern is the timing of this and the consequences. If this were to pass here and the full board, and there was a final directive to the mayor to say, keep rates flat, but you all need an increase in order to comply with the consent decree, the consequences of that I'm not prepared to deal with. So I can't be supportive of this item today. I think if it were brought at a later time, I'd be fully supportive and I would be a co-sponsor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Roy, just as a point of clarification, since I was the one that brought the consent decree, in the last 5 years, how have we changed what was originally approved by this board in order to save on the capital? And let's give one example. Instead of building deep water injection wells, as many as we had the previous board had agreed to, finding water reuse for Turkey Point. How much did we save there?
The biggest savings that we found that I can name to you is our department with our geologist team was able to prove to the EPA that a certain treatment technology they wanted called high-level disinfection at the Central District was not necessary, saving the county hundreds of millions of dollars. The other place that we've saved hundreds of millions is Miami-Dade County is the #1 recipient of WIFIA loans from the federal government from the Water Infrastructure Act, which is essentially a virtual free loan, free money usage, has saved us hundreds of millions. We've taken advantage of that has saved money. The operational things we've done have been through the use of technology. We have gone in and automated our water quality monitoring and testing to where we're better able to reduce chemical usage at all our plants, to make sure we're exact dosing only what's needed. So we've reduced our chemical usage. We've reduced our labor needed because we are using automation. And so you put it all together in a department as big as the Water and Sewer Department, one of the largest in the nation, it has real savings, and we've saved a lot of money.
Commissioner Gonzalez. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do have to say that I agree with Commissioner Cohen-Higgins, and I think she raises some very, very valid concerns. And I certainly would not like to see the county go into any sort of, fines, federal fines, reprimands, or non-compliance. And I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. I obviously didn't draft this, but, Chairwoman, you drafted this. This plan would obviously be for the administration to come back with a plan that would not put us in harm's way as far as, they would have to contemplate and come back with a plan that's not going to put us in harm's way so that we don't get either fined, reprimanded, or are in any way in non-compliance.
Of course. And that's what we've been working on for years. We've literally been working on that for years. So it's just more of the same.
But I do think that Commissioner Cohen-Higgins brings up a good point. So I guess to the administration, to Chief Coley, you are a gentleman and a scholar. We've worked together on a lot of things. I think we understand this. Chairwoman, I think
Through the chair. Commissioner, you raise a very good point, and this item is raising a very important conversation. You and Commissioner Cohen-Higgins have kind of hit the nail on the head. If it were okay, I would contemplate perhaps directing us to explore the plan that has been asked, and if for some reason that's not possible, for us to explain the capital expenses and those inflationary increases that would preclude us from doing that. I think we
100%.
owe you why we would not be able to do that, and explain the global and the local factors that are influencing the inflationary factors that preclude us from being able to procure services at the same rate we did even 6 months ago. So if we maybe could add an obligation to the administration to have some explanation, I think that
Happy to do that. And Roy and I talked about that. I mean, what we don't want to do it is at 2 a.m., right? At 2 a.m. on the budget hearing, I don't want to go 10 rounds of these are the things, right, that we can or cannot do.
And Chairwoman-
Because that's irresponsible, as far as I'm concerned, given the work that this department has done.
And Chairwoman, this would be for the plan to try to be contemplated now and taking into considerations all of the savings and efficiencies that have been found.
Yes, and the plan is to have it before you as we work on the budget.
So potentially an amendment to this that adds that directive to the administration.
I'm happy to do that. Roy and I had already talked about it, but I'm happy to do it. Commissioner Steinberg.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was going to suggest that as we move this forward, to create that plan that you're looking at for the next fiscal year, I think we should have language in there that gives the flexibility built in, whether it's to, and I don't know the actual, and maybe, Madam Chair, with the capital, because remember, this is not about the operational side, this is about capital improvement side, and we need a lot of infrastructure work to happen, and I don't want to see that in any way, shape, or form somehow get derailed. So, or put off because.
But like we said, there's a lot of technology and a lot of different things that we've changed, that we can continue changing.
Agreed. So maybe we can modify this just slightly, and you just, I think exactly that, to say something along the lines, you say here, propose a plan to maintain the rates while maintaining service, okay, designates, I'm just thinking maybe we could say, I don't know, maybe the attorneys can help come up with the language where feasible, or to come up with, provided that it doesn't hinder the department's ability to be in compliance and still provide and meet the targets of whatever upcoming projects are slated for the next fiscal year.
Right, but there's a difference between, I'm happy to do that, however, whatever projects, not all projects are ocean outfall, not all projects are consent decree.
Correct.
Right, there's other capital projects, and there's other changes that we have been discussing to capital projects that do not impact those buckets, right? So there's a lot, and listen, I represent Central Plant. We handle 70% of the wastewater, right? That includes my capital plan for Central, right? So these are all things that some of it is part of the consent decree, some of it is part of our federal requirements, some of it are just capital projects, right? Some of it are changes that we've talked about. Some are items that we've approved, right? Some of their directives that this board has given water and sewer to fulfill by a certain time. So what I'm saying is let's look at all of that and provide detailed information in a manner that can be digested by this board with a reasonable amount of time, as opposed to someone just pulling out of the budget the rate increase, right? Voting it down, and then we scramble for 3 hours trying to figure out what happens. Yes.
Yeah, and so I look at this as an exercise, like we've done with other departments, of, what does it look like if we were to do this? And so with that kind of mindset, then I think we'll just have to change our motion from before to move it as amended.
Yes.
And that's fine, thank you.
Yes.
Madam Chair, thank you. With that amendment, I'm happy to support the item because it gives us the cushion that was the source of my concern. And so I'm happy to support the item as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I guess we voted on it, so what we'll do is, no, said no, okay. So we didn't finish voted, so we have Steinberg moved it as amended, Gonzalez second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. All right, Mr. Attorney, next. Next item.
Next item is 2F.
All right, so 2F, since it was late, does anyone have any questions about 2F? This is actually a housing item that has made it on this agenda.
I'll move it.
Yes. Does the administration have anything to say? Yeah, it's an add-on. All right, okay. Well, yesterday at housing, we had a ton. My understanding is that this one didn't make it on, so we're happy to move it on. We have a motion. Can I have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next.
Next is 3G.
Yeah, we're in add-on land. Koenig is it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions about 3G. I understand that the fiscal impact to the county is being communicated as zero, but this is a fee that is being paid by our employees, correct? And I'm seeing our chief nod her head. I have to understand the employee participation here, because it's my understanding that either every paycheck or every 2 paychecks, employees pay either $15 or $20 in order to have access to these legal services. And I understand it's a service that's been offered at the county for a very long time. But do we have any feedback from our employees on whether or not, I understand that the participation is being measured by the number of employees that are enrolled in the program, which I think it's in a chart here. 7,000 are enrolled at $15, 1,900 are enrolled at $20, and 3,300 are enrolled at $20.59, if that's accurate, because that's what I have before me. It's not in the item, but it's in the email that we received in response to our questions. $18 million, or 13, it's being increased to 18. The articulated reason for the increase is based on employee participation. And what I'd like to get clarity on, is it participation based on the number of employees that are just registering to utilize the program? I'm seeing heads nodding yes. Okay. I'm sorry? Is it the
Through the
participation?
chair, yeah, we're nodding yes as we're tracking you. Yes.
Okay. And please correct me if I'm wrong as I continue with the questions. My concern about this item is that I'm almost certain that a number of these employees have this being pulled out of their paycheck without really thinking about it. And my question is, what is the feedback that we're getting from our employees on the value that they are receiving from this service? There's a lot that this doesn't include. It doesn't include litigation defense. It doesn't include family. It doesn't include dissolution of marriage proceedings. It doesn't include eviction. It doesn't include a lot, right? It doesn't include a lot. So we're paying as a county through our employees and through their paychecks automatically $13 million over the course of the term of the contract. But what is the feedback from our employees on whether they are actually receiving and seeing a value from these contracts?
So,
From these
through the
services.
Chair, this is 100% voluntary.
Yes.
During the open enrollment period, employees have choices.
Sure.
We try to provide employees with as many choices on as many things as possible. We find that it improves the employee experience. It gives them a feeling that they're getting some value in addition to the health benefits that we provide, and we actually do cover those costs. So this is at the cost of the employee, voluntary to the employee. I am not sure, and I'll ask our team to answer the question, if we've ever done a survey to ascertain their satisfaction with the particular legal services. I can tell you that I've personally used it, and I thought it was valuable. But again, it is a voluntary service. It is not required or mandatory. And we do this at the request, oftentimes, of our union partners will bring things to us and say, this is something our employees are asking for. Can you add it in what we call a slot? And we have a certain number of slots for these particular benefit programs.
Okay. That helps me a lot. And I just want to clarify, the current enrollment rate is at the numbers that I previously identified, but is there any language that gives them an out should the number of employee enrollment not meet a certain threshold, right? So do they provide the service whether one employee enrolls or whether 10,000 employees enroll?
No.
The answer is no?
Correct. So
Okay.
there's no limit or max.
Okay. And again, we can talk about this outside of the committee, and thank you for answering those questions. I'd like to see and I appreciate you, Chief, giving the feedback of your personal experience. I'd like to see what the experience of our employees are with these sorts of services. Again, because what my cause and concern is that money is being pulled, yes, voluntarily, open enrollment, everyone's paying attention, but sometimes not entirely. And I just don't want money being pulled out of paychecks for services that people either don't know that they have or they're not actually even utilizing. So we can talk about that offline. But thank you for answering my questions. I'm certainly supportive of the item and look forward to future conversations.
Through the
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I actually think it's a phenomenal idea for us to do an evaluation of our benefits programs and get direct feedback on product by product. So that is something that our team can work on. As you know, we have new leadership in our PIOD, Human Resources area. And so we have a great team, and I'm sure it's something that will bring value to the community.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, I know Commissioner Steinberg has a comment, but I remember this was birthed in part from the school district, so I'll just explain something real quick. And Namida, you can tell me what you think, but just as a point of explanation, for our employees that are union members, as part of their union dues, they are afforded legal representation should they have an HR issue. Full stop. Right? We're all on the same page? And what happens is there's a series of life issues that are not litigation based, right? That are wills, powers of attorneys, healthcare surrogates, what we consider in the legal, like forum documents, right? And the idea behind this was as part of a supplement to the unions, because the unions their attorneys were being asked about these forms. And they were like, we don't do that. We only represent you in terms of HR. There was a movement to find a contract that would do this for people because there was a need. And at this low price point, instead of going online and getting something that doesn't work, you have access to an attorney without having to pay a retainer, right? So that's my understanding. It was very successful at the school district. I will say that there was a point where we had people get off it, and then what happens is they thought that because they signed on for a certain number of years, that then they could always be on it. So I would caution you. You might want to call the school board about that because what happens is they feel, well, I paid it for like 3 years, right? I go to use it in year 4. Oh, I took it off the list and now I can't use it. So there was a lot of blowback there and there was a lot of need to explain this to folks. But Commissioner Steinberg, you had a comment? Yeah. But a survey is always a good idea, but I know that it is very popular. All right, so we're okay with this item. We're ready to move it? Move it. Okay, second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, next.
3K.
Okay, so I pulled this item also. I think somebody else did. So many issues with this. Madam Director, come on down. I understand that the agreement expires in August. For the board, I actually had an item that dealt with this that was not put on the agenda. This service has been provided for free since 2020. at an average cost of $645,000 a year based on the data that I received. As many of you know, I've been asking for data on this for over 3 years. I think there is a difference between the on-demand service that is provided for the routes that were taken out by Metro, by Better Bus, and a separate conversation about what is being made available countywide. The average cost of each ride is about $20 that we are subsidizing. I'm happy to provide everyone with the information on when transit was free in 2020, and then when we went back to paying, and what's happened over the last 5 years. But this service has actually been free since 2020 and continues to be completely subsidized. And my concern is, as the administration considers things like raising the transit fees, and as we go into looking at reducing the services that we provide for Metro Rail and Metro Bus, this on-demand service does not make sense with the crisis that we have. So that is my concern. That is not to say that I'm completely against this service, but I am completely against 18 months of an extension and $12 million, because the $12 million are not in the budget. Again, we get back to the budget that not everyone has been briefed on. The $12 million are not there. You will learn this in your briefing. So it's schizophrenic from my perspective to say the 12 million is not in the budget, but we're going to approve an 18-month agreement and then leave it up to us to kill it when we get to the budget, right? And I know that is not your intent. I know that the issue is that it expires in August. So my friendly amendment to this item is, I feel comfortable with an extension into December. And I feel comfortable with working on an RFP from now to December, because this is a sole source. An RFP has not gone out. We do not know if we have the best price. The price is high. And I think that there are opportunities to do better. And I think that as we go into our budget, we should at least be afforded with options. This does not afford us with options. If I have to go back and tell my STS riders that their $350 is going up, but I'm still providing this free service, I'm not going to support this budget. So that's where I stand on this. So yes, Commissioner Cohen-Higgins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think your points are well taken. I do want to caution us a little bit, however, and the caution that I want to, and I'm open to objections to that. The caution that I want to kind of throw out there is this discussion about the budget and what's in it when it hasn't printed for the public yet, and our colleagues have not all been briefed. This gives me a lot of uneasiness. Because what I don't want is, we're on the microphone, we're at a public hearing, this message to get out without budget items being finalized. And so I don't want, Madam Director, for us to get into potential rate increases, what may be in the budget and not in the budget, i.e. the item that's before us today. I don't know about this allegation of anyone or anything or any department being schizophrenic. I'm not following that. I do, however, support the argument that competition here is good. This is a service that is very valuable to my residents and in my community. And any change, disruption, or alteration of the service will have a great impact on my residents. So I'm very interested in this item. I'm also very concerned by the representation that there's no money in the budget for it this year, right? And so there's a lot going on here. I want to know, either from our attorneys or from you, Madam Director, what you suggest the best course of action is here, because I agree. I don't want us to advance something that may not be supported financially, but I don't know that yet, and neither does anyone else, because the budget hasn't printed yet. But I also don't want to forego a potential conclusion where this continues, because again, it's extremely important to my residents, and not just in my district, in a lot of districts. A lot of residents have become very accustomed to this service and find a tremendous amount of value in it. So I look to our Madam Chair, if she would like to give options, or to our Chief, or to our Madam Director. Those are my concerns, and if someone can give me some guidance on how to address them, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, as you've stated repeatedly, and we actually appreciate it very much, this is a difficult fiscal year. There are a lot of things that the mayor is contemplating in order to ensure we balance the budget. It is her obligation to present a balanced budget. The board ultimately will decide if what she recommends they agree with or not. This contract does expire. It does need to be extended. There's a 90-day out clause, if I understand correctly, on this contract and probably others, in the event that the proposed budget that's ultimately adopted requires us to change anything. I would agree that we need to stay the course on what we have budgeted for fiscal year 2025, which ends on September 30. And when we adopt the budget for the next year, which will start on October 1st, we do what we do every year, which is adjust and amend accordingly. I agree, Madam Chair, and Commissioner Cohen-Higgins, you know, we owe our residents to fulfill the promises we made in this year, but I think our residents also know that times have changed. A lot has changed since we have new leadership, new administration, and new financial pressures. So we respectfully, as the administration, would like to proceed with this item at this time, and then we would adjust accordingly based on the budget that the board adopts for October 1.
I absolutely disagree with that. 18 months, it's 18 months, a sole source contract. That makes no sense. I don't understand. I understand that it expires in August, and I understand that you need time. I get it. But you also should put out an RFP. If you are going to keep it, if this board decides that we're going to keep it, we should put out an RFP, because we are providing a free service since 2020. So we are charging disabled people $3.50 a ride to ride in a ride share all over Miami-Dade County. But we have been providing a completely free service. And it has nothing against whoever is providing the service. Is we have been providing a free service since 2020. And look, I have the numbers of where people are going to. This is not, okay, grocery shopping, 62%. Connecting to other public transit, 61, but not sure. Getting to work, 57. Medical appointments, 47. Look, I get it. People are going places, but we are providing a free service from their door to wherever they're going. And we are not doing that. We're not doing that we're charging people for the bus. We're charging people for the Metro Mover. We're not charging people, we're not charging people for the Metro Mover because we can't, pursuant to how the half penny was passed. But we're charging people for Metro Rail. We're charging them for Metro Bus. Why can't they pay $3.50 like everyone else? If you want to subsidize this, you can subsidize it. But why are these riders somehow different than every other modality? Why do they get to ride free? It doesn't make any sense. And this is not curtailed to any specific. If you told me this was first and last mile and they were going to transit, okay, fine, you know. And look, we worked on this when Stacy was, you know, a member of Tri-Rail. We did an Uber, you know, we contracted with Uber, and we gave people a $5 voucher when they rode Tri-Rail. And that was it. It was a set cost. This is not a set cost. Someone could literally be going from Coconut Grove to the Hard Rock and then back, right? So, you know, this this is beyond the scope of what transit does. We are, and by the way, the other information that took forever to get is how many users, because that's another issue. It's the same group of people over and over again using this service. So we are, in essence, what we're doing is we are providing a private driver to certain residents of Miami-Dade County, to the exclusion of other people, to the exclusion of other people that use transit. And that is not equitable. And I understand that we did it for a moment because we were working on Better Bus. And that's why I said, and the item that I proposed said, look, for the routes of Better Bus that we're taking out, I got it. If this is more efficient, we'll do that. But that's not what's happening in the item that you're proposing. In the item that you're proposing, you're expanding it. You're doing a lot more. And that's why it should go out to RFP. This is no longer a, oops, people don't have a place to go because of better bus. We got to put them on something, scramble, scramble, scramble. Let's figure out a modality. This is us providing a small group of people with a private driver at the cost of the residents of Miami-Dade County, while we're looking at all other options, while we're looking at potentially increasing, you know, what the people who actually pay, potentially cutting service and raising fees. That's what's on the table. And by the way, this thing about, like, let's talk about the budget. The budget hasn't been printed. I didn't set this schedule. This schedule has been set for over a year. If the mayor wanted to print the budget before this meeting happened, she could have done that. If the mayor wanted to meet with all of the commissioners before this meeting happened, she could have done that. That's not my fault. I didn't set the time of this meeting. This meeting has been set, this meeting time has been set for a very, very long time. So again, we are being forced to have this conversation. I wouldn't be talking about the transit budget and what's happening with micromobility if this item wasn't before me. And at my first appropriations meeting, I said, we have a transit hole. One of the things we should do is cut first and last mile. We need to cut mobility, micromobility, because it is not an essential part of our transit system. It is an extra. And I'm sure that people love having a private driver. I would love to have a private driver. Who wouldn't love to have a private driver and not pay for it? But how are we going to tell the people who are riding Metro Rail and Metro Bus that we're going to increase their fees or we're going to cut services because someone else deserves a private rider? And who decided that? So, to the administration, again, December, RFP. How you feeling that?
Through the chair, if you don't mind, our director can respond and ensure that we do this correctly.
I appreciate that, Madam Director.
Thank you, Stacy Miller, Director, DTPW. We are fine with an extension to December. Should the outcome of the budget discussions result in the opportunity for us to continue with this on-demand service, we'd be happy to put out an RFP and move forward.
And you have my commitment that if you need an extension beyond, you can send it at midnight. I will put it on the agenda. All right? You know, it can pass in consent. You have my commitment. You have my commitment that we will do everything possible, right? The last thing we want to do is find you without a wind down period or find you in a situation where you don't have access to provide a service. That's the last thing we want.
And that would be the only other comment. Should it, again,
of course,
the budget process ultimately result in on-demand transit service being needed or maintained, I should say not needed, maintained. I apologize for that. We would potentially come back and ask for an extension just because of the timeline by which to get an RFP out and through the process.
I'm perfectly fine with that. Happy to help. Happy to help. And listen, I think you should also provide, and look, to the vendor, I know that I met with them several times. I know that they have been open to having people pay, the minimum and having the rest subsidized. Like I said, these rides cost the county somewhere between $13 and $20 a ride. So if you charge $3.50, which is what you pay to ride the bus and what you pay to ride the Metro Rail, we would still be subsidizing it, but it wouldn't be completely free because this is abusive. And when you look at the numbers, you will see that it is abusive. Now, that being said, if commissioners want to keep a particular zone, that's something that you can work out, right? That's something that you can work out. That's something that can be done, right? But I will caution you, look at the numbers and look at where people are going. Because that's the other issue. How far are they going, and what are we actually paying for? So now that you're open to that amendment, I'm very happy with that. Does anyone have any other issues? If not, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm amenable to an extension to December, and with your communication that come December, you will likely need additional time in order to put out an RFP. I'm good with all of that. I do think that it's important to note that this program was created, at least while I was on the board, and it was voted up or down by this commission to commence this as a first last mile microtransit solution, all with the aim of increasing our ridership with our public transportation system, particularly in the area of the South, where we had just recently invested $300 million in bus rapid transit, the idea being to help people get to the bus station. And from the stats that were written, 60% of the users are using this first and half mile solution to get to our public transportation system, which is part of the unified goal of this board, is to do everything and anything we can to increase our ridership on our public transportation system here in Miami-Dade County. And so, this idea of it being private drivers, this application is open to anyone that wants to download it. There is no selection of individuals based on class, income, or it's an open platform where you can download the application, utilize it if you find the service of value to you or not. We're certainly not picking who is utilizing the service or not, but I think that our analysis of public transportation in Miami-Dade County moving forward, and this is an important discussion, and there's going to be different value-driven propositions about where we should be spending our dollars, where we should be subsidizing transportation. But I believe that this model that we implemented has been emulated in other major municipalities and major counties throughout this country as being viable solutions to first and last mile microtransit options that at the end of the day is aimed at increasing ridership for a public transportation system. So from that lens and that perspective, I look forward to the conversation when we have it. Should we put this out for an RFP at a later time? But I think, again, this is a service that a number of our residents, for whatever the reason that they don't have their own transportation and can't get to a public transportation system or bus pickup or a bus parking lot, utilizes this service for that, and I see a ton of value in it. So I look forward to the conversation, and I'm happy with the amendment to the item, which would be an extension until December. I guess, is there a directive included to put it out for an RFP, or
Yes,
would
that was
we
the
revisit
amendment.
it? It would be a directive to put it out?
If in the budget, we decide to continue the service.
I see.
So
Okay.
if there is funding in the budget, we're not going to put it on RFP
Sure,
if there's no funding.
Okay.
Okay?
Sure.
Just as a point of clarification, and listen, I have been a proponent of first and last mile for over 20 years. However, we did this analysis at Tri-Rail, and we've done this analysis. And Madam Director, I know you know this number. How much do we subsidize someone riding Metro Rail? What's a subsidy? I want to say it's over, it's like a third, right? So what they pay is like a third of what it costs.
I think you're asking me about fair
Collection, right,
recovery
right.
is about 10%.
Okay, so what they pay is 10%, okay? So, and the same is true for buses, correct? It's like a little bit, yeah.
That's our average. is
That's the average,
10%.
right? So what we're saying is that the $350 that we pay is 10% of what it costs us to run the modality. So you're already losing 80% to ride public transit, and now you're giving them a free ride at $18 to $20 to get to the public transit, which, by the way, according to the numbers, is less than 60%. So just putting out the math, folks. And I love micromobility. I'm a fan, right? I'm a believer. However, at some point, you have to have a serious consideration, and Stacy heard me say this at Tri-Rail a million times, return on investment. What is your return on investment? How are you investing your money, and what is your return? How many riders are you actually getting for the money that you're bleeding? In this scenario, almost nothing. Almost nothing. So we'll have the conversation at budget. I think we should be having it before budget because there's a lot of issues. One thing is, a 90% subsidy on existing transit, and another thing is a full subsidy that may or may not get you to transit. So I think that the vendor's here. So is the vendor okay with the extension? Yes, we nod yes? Okay, I thank you for your patience. And we'll deal with the rest of it when we get to the budget. So with that, can I have a motion to move?
As amended.
As amended, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. What else do we have?
3L.
3L? Okay, this is another late filed, correct?
This is on the changes sheet, yes.
Yeah. All right, anyone have any issues on 3L? It's an office for a rep. The administration have anything to say on this? Everybody good? Okay, move it. Gonzalez, move it. Cohenhagen, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, next.
3N.
Any issues on this one? My only question on this one is, this is completely for Metro Zoo, and they get the money back from the system, correct? Is what I understood? This
Through the
is-
chair, that
yeah.
is my understanding.
Yes, I know, as Christina gets up. Just because Parks is a whole other issue, so we haven't even gotten to the issues that we'll have with Parks in the budget, but this is good. Metro Zoo takes care of it, Metro Zoo pays for it, it doesn't take away from any other parks. We're good. And it's a savings. All right, so positive budgetary impact on 3N. Can I have someone move it? Gonzalez moves it. Can I have a second? Second, Steinberg seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Yes.
Those are all the items on my list, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know if we were gonna get through anything, and I believe that the item is well-intentioned. But since we do have a little bit of time, I did wanna bring back 2B, because I do have a question on it. We passed it in consent. So can we have a motion to reconsider it? I move it. All those in favor? Aye. All right, so 2B's back. I know that this came up from one of the presentations that we had. And I just had questions for staff on it. Yes? I know, my understanding is that it excludes Jackson, correct?
That is my understanding of the item, Madam Chair.
All right. So what's left? When you exclude Jackson, what are the actual numbers on collections?
Madam Chair, unfortunately, I don't have that information on me. I think our staff person thought the item had passed and moved.
Right.
Yeah, so
Never
I
leave a meeting.
apologize for that.
Okay. So I guess if you can get her, please. What I want to know is, because we have dealt with this in the past, there is certain debt that we cannot sell. So there is the Jackson debt that has certain parameters, and then there's the remaining debt, right? And my question is, how is this going to work, right? Because historically, we've kept the debt. We have a department. That department, their mantra has been, we try to collect it, but eventually some of these people come back with a permit, they come back with something else, and then we get all the money back, right? I understand that what the maker is saying is, well, we can sell it to like a third company. The question is, how much are we going to get from that third company? Is this going to include a reduction in that department? So if we're clearing out the debt for that department, are we going to get rid of the humans whose job it was to work on this debt? If we're going to sell, if we're outsourcing, because what we're talking, the item is outsourcing the collection of the debt. So if we're outsourcing the collection of the debt, are we going to reduce the department? Are we going to move those people? Is it for a period of time? What's the plan? What's the administration's position on the item?
So through the chair, our team does a phenomenal job of collecting this debt, and I believe the number is 500 million that you were asking me about before when
Okay.
you exclude Jackson. The reason Jackson contracts with us is because we're called the last mile. They have already tried to collect this debt, extend it as much as they can, and then they know that because there's a relationship potentially between some of those debtors and the county, by bundling that, it increases the likelihood that Jackson will be able to collect their end. And so our team does everything they can on the county's debt to bring it all together in a way that helps, in a compassionate way, facilitate repayments, payment plans, or even absolving or the debt for the individuals. We actually would prefer that this service stay in the county because we think we do it in a way that's consistent with our values and that protects the best interest and the humanity of our residents who sometimes fall on short times. We also are able to garner revenue. This department pays for itself. It is budget neutral, if not revenue generating. And so that would be a loss to the county. Everything that we bring in, we actually keep. If we were to outsource it, then they would take a percentage of what they make,
Right.
which would cost us money.
Right.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
And so I just want to understand it correctly because, so in my law firm, I do employment law, right? And so I sue evil companies that take advantage of employees or discriminate against employees, and then they have to pay certain damages to those employees. But not all the time, but sometimes we win a huge lawsuit, and then those companies, they don't have the means to pay. And so what I do with my business sometimes is we will, kind of, the client will decide to sell that judgment to a separate company that goes and they collect that judgment. And so sometimes it's $100,000 judgment, and a company will buy it for, let's say, $35,000. And so the only reason that is recommended to some clients is when there is a company that would not pay or would have a very tough time paying, or even with the tough time of paying, would go through a lengthy litigation process that would cost the client money to get anything back. And so sometimes it's a business decision. And I say that, I know that we've been here for a while, but I explain that because that's the way that I'm understanding this. And I don't know if the drafter of the item can elaborate, but the way that I understand is there is certain debt that we have that it might be a good business decision that rather than invest more resources into trying to get back that money, we can sell it, make a little bit less money than what we would get, but at the same time, there is a chance that we'll never see that money either way. So sometimes it just makes more fiscal sense to sell the debt, get cash flow immediately, especially like a year like this year, right, where we need cash flow, and not keep waiting and hoping that we can collect the debt. That's the way that I'm seeing it, but I would like clarification on that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. My point is, this is a department. So if that happens, if you clean out the debt, what happens to the humans? So what the item doesn't ask in the report, and again, it's a report. What I'm saying is, tell us what's going to happen to the humans. Are they union? Do they get bumped somewhere else? Are we talking about a reduction in that department? Like this is an outsourcing. And again, I get it. We're in a difficult situation. We're making difficult decisions. I understand your point. I understand the administration's historical, rationale for it. And I actually agree with you. However, if we're going to look at alternatives, you have to also look at the department and figure out who's staying, who's going, where they're going, who's union, right? And to their point, the department pays for itself. But if you take out the debt and you start fresh, how does that work? Well, and then how often are you going to be, how much of it are you privatizing? In essence, the item is asking you to have a report on the privatization of an existing county department that collects debt. I'm not making a judgment call. That's what it's saying. Now, what are the implications of that on that department is what I would add to the item.
And
Because
Madam
what we
Chair, I
don't want to,
agree.
yeah, we
Maybe
don't want to have a
perhaps-
department that doesn't need to exist.
Madam Chair, perhaps the report could come back with explaining, for example, I'd like to know how much that department is costing us. And like, for example, like in my law firm, I have folks that collect for other cases, and when we sell debt and they're not collecting, they're able to do another task, and thus add more efficiencies to the law firm, right? So I think that perhaps, to the chairwoman's point, and obviously if the drafter is amicable to it, perhaps part of that report could come back with what those numbers look like, because it could very well be, to the chairwoman's point, that maybe we're spending more money than we're getting back, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe by doing this, we would lose more money. But I think it should be clear that, just because you have a piece of paper that says that somebody owes you $10 doesn't mean you're going to get the $10. And I think the chairwoman's clear on that. So sometimes it's better to just get $3 back rather than spend 3 weeks trying to chase
Agree.
money that you're not going to get.
Agree, and we'll go to the maker in a second. I just have one question. How many employees are in this department, and how many of them are members of the union, and what union?
I'll have the team look that up, Madam Chair, but I will tell you that we have a 61% success rate on our collections, which is one of the reasons why Jackson contracts with us, because they have not been that successful, nor the vendors that they contracted with before. Many of these debts can be anywhere from 4 to 10 years old, so we definitely prioritize those accounts based on aging. And then we generate approximately $17 million a year in collections, which far exceeds the cost of running that department. So as soon as I get the answer to your other question, I will share that information. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not that much. We actually cut this department this year by about 50% as a result of our budget reductions, but we intentionally maintained this workforce because they are not only self-sustaining, but they're revenue generating. I would personally not want to give 35% of that $17 million to a private vendor.
Is there another department that they could go to? I mean, their expertise is debt collection, if they are a union, and we'll find out how many people we're talking about and what is their position, but where would they go?
I'm sorry, through the chair. It's actually a division in a larger department, so it's not a department in and of itself. There are 3, if I recall correctly, other divisions in this particular department.
Okay, so this particular division, though, if we were to outsource this and this would be eliminated, the humans that are there now, would they bump somewhere else where they could do debt collection, or do we no longer need their services? I would assume they could go to WASD, they could go somewhere else. There's other debt collections in other departments.
To answer your question through the chair, we're doing the debt collection for most of the county, but to answer your question, an individual whose job is eliminated, if they're union, they have bumping rights, and so they'll go to the next job that they're eligible for. It may or may not be in that same field. Of course, then that bumps somebody who bumps somebody. Those individuals who are not in a collective bargaining agreement, we have a pipeline process by which it is our value to try to ensure that we find something that is consistent with their skill set. In the event that doesn't happen, then of course their job would be eliminated and they would no longer be employed by Miami-Dade County. So I'm getting data real time. There are 30 collectors who are directly collecting that debt, which I told you annually is about $17 billion.
How many of them are union?
Coming in, I'll ask.
All right. Well, we'll wait on the union and what happens to them, but, okay. So I guess the maker had something to say.
Great. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity to speak on my item. So we're having a discussion that is not on topic. The item doesn't call for the outsourcing of the department, i.e. take a percentage of what you collect. It speaks to selling the debt. 2 completely different options. This is not about outsourcing. When you sell a debt, it's a one-time purchase. You have $500 million. I'll give you $100 million for the $500 million because I can go out and do something with it in the market, or I can find innovative ways to collect differently and more efficiently than you, Miami-Dade County, can. So I would appreciate the discussion to be focused on the item that is before us. There is no discussion of outsourcing it and a percentage collected and that costing more than what the current department runs for. We are $400 million short. At our last hearing, our chairman said every option is on the table, and I couldn't agree with that more. We have a department that's doing a wonderful job. When I spoke to them and asked them whether or not this debt has ever been considered for sale, they said no. The time is now to consider that option. This asks for a report. It doesn't direct the administration to take any affirmative action. I want the research to be done. I want it to be done thoroughly. And in my conversations that I've had with the private equity market, there is a ton of interest to buy our debt, the debt that qualifies to be sold. And so if we can close our $400 million budget gap, even fractionally, through this item, I think it's one of those every option on the table that our chairman mentioned we should absolutely explore. And it says within 30 days, again, with an eye of hopefully having some sort of a dent or an impact before our September budget hearing. So I'm not trying to close departments, eliminate departments, but if there is a private market that has an interest in buying our debt, even if it's for pennies on the dollar, and it helps us, this is money that is owed to Miami-Dade County. It's difficult for us to message to our residents, we're $400 million short, and oh, by the way, we're owed $3.1 billion, and we're not interested in taking any overly aggressive measures to try and collect that and try to close that gap during a time where we absolutely need it. This, to me, is an option on the table that we should consider. There's not an expense to us. I'm only asking for a report to come back to the board within the next 30 days so we can see
I
whether there
appreciate that.
actually is a market and vendors out there within the finance world that would be interested in purchasing this.
I appreciate it, but I disagree with you on that. It doesn't have an impact on the division because we're talking about selling a debt, but their job is to collect the debt. So if you sell, let me finish, I'll let you finish.
I wasn't finished, Madam Chair. You spoke when I did not yield the floor. The debt is ongoing. Every year, additional debt is accrued. This is a one-time sale. If in 5 years we need to sell the debt again, we sell the debt again. The idea that you're suggesting that this item terminates an entire department.
I didn't say an entire department.
But I
said
keep asking
there's
who's
30
unionized,
people.
what's the number of employees within the department? Again,
Because
you're
there's gonna be a
sending off
reduction in the
alarms and
workforce.
misinformation.
No,
that
there's
is
gonna be a
triggering people
reduction
that is
in the
entirely
workforce.
unnecessary. It is a report. Debt is accrued every day in this county. I'm suggesting sell the debt now. We have a $400 million gap. Let's
And
get
the
50
point
million.
that I'm
Let's get
making to you
25 million.
is that if you
it's
sell
not
the
the elimination
debt,
of a
you
department.
may have a reduction in the workforce because their job is to collect the debt that you just sold. Yes, debt accrues, but it doesn't accrue in real time that way. So you have 30 people and you will likely have a reduction of the workforce. And that's fine. I'm not for or against that. I'm just saying that the report should speak to what happens in the division, because if it is the job of 3 people to try to collect the debt that you have sold, then as a county, we have to figure out what to do with those 3 humans. Now,
Agreed.
but that all I'm saying is to include that in the report. That's all I'm saying. I'm not for or against it. I'm saying that take it to the next level. This is their job. And does it make sense? It might make more sense. By the time you do the math on how much they make, right? It might make more sense. But I just don't want the information being brought in a vacuum. It's going to impact humans because this is their job. So I'm just asking for a report that is comprehensive. And that I don't see why that is a negative thing. I mean, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. If you eliminate someone's job, and listen, this is going to happen the entire budget. And I started appropriations 2 months ago talking about this. All right? This is a very simple concept. When you say something like we're going to reduce park hours, or we're going to close a park, or we're going to reduce programming, that's what it says on the line item. But there's a human attached to that. There's a human. And that human may be eliminated by virtue of that decision. And I'm not making a judgment call. I'm just saying, say the thing, right? So if we're going to look at selling the debt, what I want is a comprehensive analysis of the impact that that will have on the division whose job it is to collect that debt. Because if you have 30 humans and what they do is try to collect debt and you sell a percentage of that debt, it follows that debt doesn't happen from one day to another. It actually takes years. There is a process. You have 60-day notice, 90-day. And by the way, this is really old debt. We're not at the forefront here of the collecting of this debt. So you're going to sell potentially a backlog of 3 to 4 years of debt. And it'll take 3 to 4 years to get back to that number. So I'm not against your cost savings. I'm just saying that the item does not speak to the impact that it will have. And I'm just asking that the administration speak to that and that the report speak to the impact that it will have on the division. You wanted to speak?
Through the chair, and thank you to the sponsoring commissioner for the clarification, because there was a misunderstanding. 100% of those 30 employees are in a collective bargaining agreement. This debt ranges from 40 to 20 years old. The item does not include Jackson, which is $3.6 billion. If you remember, Jackson does a lot of work prior to, in essence, selling the debt to us, because it is absolutely the last mile, and the other companies have been unsuccessful in collecting that debt. And so we have been successful because we've been able to leverage the other debts that we have to try to tack this on and create a compassionate way in which we negotiate and work with our residents who may have fallen on hard times. So I do believe that if we did a study to your request of the feasibility, we could come back with an answer to your question. It has not, in my tenure or leadership, been done that we have done an evaluation of selling that $500,000. But to your point, we can analyze that and bring something back and include in that the implications for the individuals in that division and the implications financially on the county. I cannot speak.
That's all I'm asking. And also what impact, if any, it would have on Jackson giving us their debt, right? Because Jackson has chosen us for a particular reason. If we're then going to go and sell that debt, well, they might as well go out and sell that debt.
Remember, we're 61% successful on that three. I mean, so we're doing actually quite well in this space.
Yes.
Thank you. So, Chief, you said the debt is 20 to 40 years old. I'm looking at a presentation that we were given less than a month ago.
I'm sorry, 4 to 20.
4 to 20. It says 79% of the referred accounts have aged over the last 4 years. And to be clear, this item doesn't include Jackson's debt, which is the lion's share of it. We're not selling Jackson's debt. We can't sell Jackson's debt, correct? This is just the $500 million.
The way that I read the item, yes, ma'am.
We have an aggregate outstanding payable to the county of, what is it, $4.1 billion? So, right, I mean, this is $500 million of that $4.1 billion, right? So there's still a balance remaining in that department to collect, even if we were to find a buyer for this $500 million, correct? Do you understand what I'm saying? The amount that department collects currently is $4.1 billion.
So if I may, Madam Chair, the Jackson portion of the debt that we balance on an annual basis is $3.6 billion. It's about 88% of the 4.1. The Miami-Dade County portion is of $510 million. That includes water and sewer, solid waste, RER, fire rescue, sheriff, aviation, animal services, housing, and internal services. So the item contemplates selling the $500 million, which is about, 12% of what we balance on an annual basis. To date, we have an average of a 61% success rate on what we work in a 12-month period, which equates to $17 million coming back into Miami-Dade County. The number that I wish I had, to the chairwoman's point, is the cost to us of collecting $17 million. I don't know that number, but let's just say, if it's even possible, that 30 people cost us $100,000 per person. I don't think they get paid that much. We're still doing very well with this business unit's tenacity and our ability to do this work. That does not mean your question is not a fair question. I think it is absolutely a fair question to find out if there is a market for that $500 million that we annualize on debts that are anywhere from 40 to 20 years old.
All right.
Yeah, just really quickly, the 61% success rate, I'm not understanding that. If you're collecting $17 million annually on a $4.1 billion debt, explain to me how that translates to a 61% success rate over a 12-month period.
Through the chair, we only, and it sounds weird to say we only have 30 people, but there's only 30 people and there's only so many hours in a day. So what we do is we set targets. We set monthly, quarterly, and annual targets on the money that is owed to us. We then prioritize the capacity or the likelihood of being successful based on the age, the number of debts that that particular household or family might have, and our ability to locate them. And so based on those targets, we have been able to succeed on an annual basis in our collection trajectory. We do not intend to try to collect $4.1 billion annually. It's a rolling process, if I'm explaining that correctly.
Yeah, we're running out of time, folks. The next folks need to come in, so we gotta wrap this one up. My point was I just want everything included in the report that comes back, and happy to
Second.
Yeah, move the item. Second. All those in favor? Aye. All right. And with that, we will adjourn. Like I said, you're gonna receive calls about a joint meeting. I hope you can join us.
Monthly fees in order to build up the financial reserves required by state law.